Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth UK Live. Joining me tonight and joining Paula tonight is Sasha, otherwise known as Orphan Red. Sasha, welcome to Flat Earth UK Live.
Hello everyone.
Hello to you too. On tonight's show we will be discussing spherical and plane geometry. We'll also look at the nasty comments we get in YouTube videos, along with the very flat and stationary plane we call Earth. So, Sasha, can you start us off by telling us, was it a gradual realization or a light bulb moment? How did you find out the Earth is flat?
It was a really gradual thing. I was into the conspiracy theories, and so I think I was already a little bit more open-minded about what's real and what's not and what's kind of going on behind the scenes. And so I came across Matthew Powerland's photo or painting, and I came across Mark Sargent's clues. And it's clues that really sparked something for me. And then I just started doing my own research, and it took me a while. And I still have moments where I wake up and I think, is this really real? But yeah, it is. And so it's been an interesting development.
So would you say you're still on that gradual sort of learning curve then? You're still not 100% convinced?
Well, I'm convinced that the Earth is not a globe. And I'm convinced that the flat perspective is more accurate. Definitely, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you've obviously done quite a bit of research and put out some really good videos on this subject, which we'll get to a bit later. But you've also dealt with some of the really nasty comments, and I wanted to get that out of the way first. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I had to do a mean tweets type video just to deal with it in my own way. There is so much aggressive hatred for flat Earth, videos for women who put themselves out on YouTube in any way. When I first looked at starting to do these videos, I looked at some of the science girl type videos, and they get horrific comments. And I just decided to do my own approach, be more myself, just kind of amp it up a bit. And it's really shocking, just the level of inappropriate, obnoxious behavior. Yeah, it's really surprising. And it's really disappointing, to be honest, because we think that we understand social norms in our society, that even if no one's watching, we kind of think that people still try to behave well towards one another. But the internet, it's kind of like the locker room from a 1950s rugby club in some ways, where there's nobody watching, so everyone's on their worst behavior. So it's been eye-opening, definitely.
Yeah, it seems like you put up 1 million miles of fiber optic cable between your screen and the person you're abusing, and that gives people free reign to be as nasty and as evil as they think is appropriate on some random video that they dislike or disagree with.
But it shows me that people are deeply unhappy, and that people are really struggling with a sense of self, with how to establish a strong sense of self. And I think in society we're not giving, and I think for men in some ways, maybe in a more pronounced way, we're not necessarily giving them a way to establish a sense of male. I am strong, I'm powerful, I'm masculine. I think there are a lot of things in society that undermine that. And I think that for some of those people, going on the internet and asserting that they're right, that they are powerful, that they have the power to hurt you, to put you down, I think that that feeds something in them that society has caused. So I really don't think it's the fault necessarily of the trolls. I think as a society, as a community, we need to look at ourselves and what norms we're setting, what standards we're setting, and what are we allowing? What kind of marketing are we okay with? And in terms of defining our roles in society.
The negative parts of that, but you reflected it back onto those people, whether it's their fault or not. You were there holding up a mirror to it in that most recent video you did about 10 days ago. I mean, can you, without me dicing up exactly what you did, can you talk us through how you came to do that video and what you actually did on it?
Right, sure. So I called into a radio show and I was on mute. The call lineup was muted and the host didn't realize it. And so one of the hosts made fun of me while I was listening. I could hear him. They were on break. And it just hurt my feelings so deeply, because I thought that I had a friendship with this person. And also, whenever you call into a radio show, even this, you're putting yourself out there publicly, and there's always going to be a certain sense of self-consciousness. And because I get these judgments sent to my inbox and comment section, I think there's a sensitivity about, okay, I'm going to say something, people are going to react, they're going to judge me for it. And so there was that extra vulnerability. And so when I heard the comment, I was very hurt, and I just decided this is just not appropriate and it's unnecessary. We're not children in a kindergarten, we're adults, and there's nothing preventing us from regulating ourselves and each other. I don't think we need paid policemen to make us behave well. I think that we can do it ourselves and work with each other in ways that kind of elicit that. So, and also I've been getting terrible rape threats as well on my YouTube comment section.
Really?
Yeah, and scary ones actually. and so I just thought, rather than kind of accepting this, and also people don't see it, so the trolls that want to hurt me, they think that nobody else is doing this, so they need to do it twice as hard. So I thought, okay.
You also summed it up quite nicely. It's like, what standards are we setting by allowing this to happen? I mean, obviously you can focus on it as you as an individual, but it's about a sort of community standard that we shouldn't have to allow or accept. Would you agree?
Definitely. And I think we have to recognize that it's not just about saying the baddies aren't allowed to hurl insults. It's about saying, I'm not allowed to hurl insults. If someone says something, I don't have to call them an idiot, a moron. The word retard keeps coming up in the flat earth community for reasons I don't understand. I can choose to say, you know what, your argument isn't a very strong argument. Or I can say, you're not a very nice person and I don't like what you're saying. But there's no reason to attack them, because I think that that's the issue. I think everyone feels justified in their attack. Everyone feels like they're defending, oh, we're defending the flat earth, so we're going to call global believers all these names. And then the science believers, scientism, the scienters, I like to call them, they think that they're defending something of value as well. So I think if we engage in that behavior, then we're setting that standard for our community.
And by highlighting it, just literally reading the comments straight back to the people and naming and shaming them. It was, I don't know, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it now, but it was so simple. And I'm not saying that to put it down, but it was just such an eloquent way of holding a mirror up to these people and saying, this is what you're actually saying to me. And I bet the people who heard that sunk so low into their chairs when they heard it.
And people were shocked that that's what's going on, that's what's being said. And like you said, I think the people that had said these things were probably just as shocked to hear it said. And I didn't want to trivialize it. So I tried to read them with the feeling that I imagined the writers had when they wrote it. And I think that makes it effective to say, this is how you're choosing. These are the emotions that you're choosing to feel. There are more constructive ways, I think, to make the world a better place.
You did one other thing, and I will mention this before we move on, but there was a point where I can't remember exactly what it was. It was something pretty serious, but you cut the music in the editing when you read it out.
The guy who wants me to be crucified, and well, raped first and then crucified because I make videos about flat earth.
Just unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that, let's get back onto flat earth now. I mean, basically explain the difference in trigonometry when measuring the distance to the celestial bodies. Can you explain to people what relevance that actually has to the shape of our earth?
Well, science presents us with this view, the sun is 93 million miles away, and the Earth is an oblate spheroid. And the problem with this is that all these facts were established in different eras. So initially, the Earth was a perfect sphere, and the celestial bodies orbited in perfect circles, and it was all God's plan. And then they made other theories based on that assumption. And then they discovered little problems with that, and so then they had to tweak everything. So 200 years ago, they realized, oh, oops, actually, we live on an oblate spheroid. We live on a pear-shaped Earth. It's not a perfect circle. And the orbits aren't perfectly circular. But when they made those changes, they didn't change all the other facts that rested on that underlying assumption of perfect spherical Earth. And so one of the consequences of that is that when you triangulate the distance to the sun, and because their numbers, they use the 92 million miles away, that triangle is very sensitive to angle differences. And so even if the angle is just an itty bitty rounding error different, it makes a huge difference in the length of the side of the triangle, which is the distance between that point of the Earth and the sun. And so a lot of the scientists in response to that video said, oh, it's just a small percentage difference, it doesn't make a difference. And I thought, how can you be in science and not understand this very basic principle that if your triangle lengths are that long, then yes, a very tiny percentage of a difference of an angle is going to make a huge difference in the size of your triangle. So what I found was on a flat Earth, when you see the sun, because of the time zones, it's really hard to, it's not hard to explain, but I think about all these different things when I think about it, so it's hard to parse it out. But the basic point is you can have two people on our Earth looking at the sun. One person's looking in the afternoon, one person's looking in the morning, and they're looking at obviously the same sun. And so you can calculate a triangle between the sun, the two people, and then the distance between them. And by using an equilateral triangle where all three sides are the same, then the distance between the two people is the same as the distance to the sun. And the interesting thing was, when I started looking at this, is that I kept getting a number that correlates well with the distance to the sun that ancient navigators used to get with their sextants, which was between 3,500 and 4,000 miles above the Earth. Sure. And so when I looked at that same model on the globe, it just fails to work because you don't actually get the 93 million miles on an oblate spheroid. You get it on a perfect sphere, but as soon as you move off that perfect spherical model that we dismissed 200 years ago, then all of a sudden, sometimes the sun is 120 million miles away, and then sometimes it's 42 million miles away. And so to me, it's surprising that that hasn't been addressed in standard science.
Sure, especially as we're led to believe that it's 100% accurate. It is, 97 million miles away, and that's it. That's fact.
Yes, yeah, they do. They give everything as a fact, unquestionable, and to question it, it means you're crazy. Yeah.
I mean, is there a particular flat Earth model that you subscribe to? Obviously, we're discussing the sun and moon going above us on the flat plane, but that's a very small percentage of a lot of different flat Earth models. Is there one that you really like or go along with more than others?
Well, I think that a lot of there's the three main models, and I think that each of them offers a very good model, a better model than the globe by far. But I like the Math Paralon infinite plane. I don't think of it as an infinite plane. I think of it as a vast plane. I like that theory. I think that in a lot of ancient mythologies, instead of talking about a wall of ice, they used to talk about the ocean encircling the world. And
say that again. The ocean and what, sorry?
The ocean encircling the world. And so it's interesting to me that in the same era where they said there was an ocean encircling the world rather than the ice, they also talked about all these gods that were coming to visit them. So to me, that suggests maybe this vast plane that we're on also has climatic changes. And so maybe at some point in the past, it wasn't ice, it was warmer, and it allowed for travel between different petals. which to me, that would explain a lot of different things. So I kind of like that theory, and I could see how that might work. But I also like the dome enclosed world theory. I think that there's support for that as well. The plasma shield dome that NASA talked about recently is suggestive of that. And I think that there are a lot of problems with the stars that also suggest that it's an enclosed world, that it's projected onto some kind of a dome. So yeah, I think that that's a strong theory as well. The militarization of Antarctica, that suggests that there's something there, right? That they don't want us finding, or that maybe there are others on the outside, I don't know. So I think that that theory is a strong theory as well. But to be honest, the simulation theory of reality is one that rings true to me, but not as a computer game. I don't see this as a meaningless, purposeless simulation. I don't see it as a game. I think that there is a purpose. I think that we are, to a certain extent, there are consequences to our choices here and the decisions that we make. But I do think, in my experience, there's something about reality that's not concrete, and I think it suggests that it's something like a simulation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think when the first one that you came to was Math Powerland, and he phrases it quite cleverly because he actually calls it just more land as opposed to infinite plane. So would you say that you would agree that there's possibly more land out there?
Definitely, yes. And even the enclosed world allows for that, right? The dome doesn't have to be 100 feet away from the militarized border, right? So I think that that's a definite possibility. Which one do you prefer?
Well, it's the not knowing. Jaron gave one of the most eloquent answers when I asked him what his belief systems were, and he basically said that he didn't like to hold beliefs, and he just liked to look with his own eyes and find proof. I mean, I'm very much paraphrasing what he said, but when it comes to the dome, I think, well, yeah, we've got biblical text and lots of religions point to it, but NASA also point to it, and they're kind of full of it, which makes me scratch my head and think, well, if NASA are telling us that there's the plasma layer or the Van Allen belts, you think, well, why are they telling us this? They don't normally want to give us anything, which puts me off. I don't know why.
Definitely, but I think that the nuclear testing in the late 50s, that is suggestive of something, and I think it depends on how you interpret it. But I find that not persuasive, but there's something about that that leads me to think that it supports the dome theory.
But then there's another camp of people when you start that line of research that will go into nuclear testing not even being real and nuclear arms being a complete farce as well. So you kind of back into the midst of what do you believe? Most of the information is tarnished to some degree or another. I mean, talking of the information, you've obviously educated yourself hugely in flat Earth. Do you find that that's any less respected for being a young woman?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm not young.
I don't know how old you are. You look young.
Thank you. But I think, yes, I think being a woman, definitely. And I see it in the comments. It's interesting that the default is male. So I get a lot of comments about, oh, your voice is too high-pitched. You need to start speaking with a low voice. And I just think, because the professional, real default voice is male, and therefore I need to emulate it by talking as much like a man in low voice, serious tones. I think that's ridiculous. And then I get comments, oh, I should cover up my cleavage. I'm not going to hide my femininity in order to be taken more seriously, because that supports the idea that serious people are male, and in order to be taken seriously, you have to hide all evidence that you're not a male. And so that's why I emphasize, I suppose, my feminine qualities, because I really want to move away from this idea that information that comes from a male is somehow to be taken more seriously than information that comes from a girl with this ponytail and this glitter. Because people need to start realizing that's what got us into this situation in the first place. You need to evaluate information on its own merits. You can't judge the person telling you something and then trust that that determines whether the information is good or bad. So
will the potential for the realization of flat Earth become dogmatic, or do you think the kind of the way our world works will change again in future?
I think there's more to this than the flat Earth. And I think that right now we are being given an opportunity to demand a change that will allow us as a society to get access to the truth. But if we miss this opportunity, then I think we're going to go head first into a new dogmatic religious system where you have religious flat earthers and religious scientism and Islam. And I think that that's concerning. And I think that we should be fighting against that. And we really need to, as much as we're enjoying sharing these videos and kind of entertaining each other and ourselves, I think we also need to start taking it to our real life and figure out how do we start demanding this unseating of scientism, the priesthood of scientism, because otherwise I think we're going to be in trouble.
What ways, though, do you think that the realization might change? Obviously, a lot of people have asked, and including myself, will say that they've come to flat Earth through a YouTube video. Do you think that might change in the future? Do you think the way people will realize the truth will change?
Yes, I think most people just go along with common sense. So if we can start shifting online ideology to get this idea of, oh, flat Earth is something that some legitimate people believe in, and I think the rapper B.O.B. did a great job of that. And I think that that just inches it into the mainstream ideology, and then that allows normal, everyday people to say, yeah, you know, I always thought there was something weird about some of the ideas about the globe, and this flat Earth theory, that sounds okay. I don't think it has to be this huge shock to everybody's system. I think a lot of people are just going to gradually shift into buying into the flat Earth theory without too much resistance.
So whose ideas then have you taken the most influence from, would you say?
I'm terrible for this because I like a video, but that doesn't necessarily mean I like everything that content creator is putting out. So when I watch flat Earth videos, I tend to look at the ideas or the information that's being shared rather than becoming really loyal necessarily to the content creator. I mean, more now as I'm trying to get to know people, maybe I'm doing that a little bit more. So, I mean, the Mark's 12 Clues influenced me because he was one of the few that put his message in a way that appeals to me, which is not angry, not outraged, not aggressive, not saying everybody is stupid who doesn't believe this, but just very soft and gentle and saying, here's some information that if you want to look at, you might find interesting. And so I think that was the most influential approach.
Was it the historical facts that were in those videos, or was it the more questioning nature of it?
But he brought all these different ideas together, and it was a lovely theory, or it was a lovely idea, like candy. The German video with the flights not mapping onto a globe, that was more substantial for me. That was kind of, oh, this confection that I was enjoying, it's actually something, it's more of a meal, it's something more substantial. Yeah.
Does this new outlook change your day-to-day behavior in any way? Has it affected your everyday decision making now that you know you're on flat Earth?
Well, I've always been very concerned about morality, about my own morality, figuring out for myself. And I don't think that the flat Earth changes that. I'm still concerned about how to make good choices, how to be a positive influence in the world. In a way, though, I think it's made me less angry because I see all this anger and I realize that I don't like it. And so I think it softened me more so than other things.
It seems crazy that we can say that because I've said this many times. There's so much love in the flat Earth community, and I'm not going to dive into cult associations, but there's plenty of support, plenty of nice people. But yet, right at the beginning of the show, we're talking about the polar opposite, the pure evil that's involved. It's crazy that there could be such a massive contrast in the same place.
Well, I think Mark has been very supportive, and that's made a really big difference. Patricia has been fantastic. She's fantastic for the community. She's really building this network of people. So in that sense, and I've had tremendous amount of support from my fans and subscribers and just the community. So yes, you're right. I should really stress that there is a really strong sense of support.
I mean, this is something that I possibly wasn't going to touch on. I know Paula was discussing this with me before the show, but with things like Facebook, you get sort of a very different type of interaction, especially when it comes to something like Flat Earth on Facebook. And it's not something I particularly dabble with much. I know you're quite into Facebook. Can you tell us how you found your interactions when it comes to Flat Earth on that particular social media platform?
Oh, it's been really wonderful because it allows me to really get to know people in the community who aren't content creators. And I think that that's important because there aren't that many content creators compared to how many people actually believe in the flat Earth model. And so it's been really nice. And I think people are lonely. This is something that you can't talk to with anyone. And I think a lot of people are really struggling with that. And so it's nice to be able to connect with those people and say, yeah, I'm in the same boat. I also am surrounded in a lot of ways by people that just don't really get my way of seeing things. So it's been nice to see that. I mean, it has its ups and downs as well. Also, Facebook is a wonderful way of sharing information. I've discovered a lot of videos that I wouldn't have on my own, a lot of articles. So it's been really nice that way.
So it's not all horrible Facebook hatred like I get. I know no Facebook flat earthers, so all I get is the however many couple of hundred people that I know on there giving me nothing but hatred. I mean, I've only just recently added people like yourself and Patricia.
Yeah, it's interesting though, right? Because it shows you that this is having an impact. The fact that that your normal everyday Facebook friends are finding it so hard to deal with this. I mean, it shows us a lot that science is a religion and that the standard model is a religious belief. And when someone tries to defect from the religion, oh, everybody comes and it's apostasy and everyone wants to stone you.
The globe is so dogmatic, and the way that it gets into our heads is from birth. Every image on every TV screen, iPad, iPhone, newspaper cutting, doesn't matter what it is, every billboard, you're being subjected non-stop to the globe. So it's no real surprise that people brace against it and don't want to know when you present something that's completely alien to them in the case of Flat Earth. I mean, have you done any, or are you doing any new Flat Earth research?
I'm doing videos. I do thought experiments. I just finished a really boring video on the gravitational wave, so I have to edit it this afternoon because it's so boring.
Why'd you say it's boring? I don't know, it's a good subject to rip apart.
Yeah, I really wanted to cover this because I think that we really need to think about it and talk about it, discuss it in society. So I will put it up, but I have to do some work on it. But in terms of experiments, I think that I do get a lot of comments or emails from people saying, please do an experiment to prove the flat Earth that I can then share to all my friends to convince them that the Earth is flat. And I think that's how we got here. That's the problem, that someone does an experiment and then everyone just buys into whatever they conclude. And so I don't find that to me, it's just not my way of finding knowledge. So, because when you design an experiment, then there's a lot of room for error, and you're using your underlying assumptions about how things work. and then you have to interpret the result, right? There isn't a clear conclusion of truth. It's just a result, and then you kind of interpret that. So I don't really do experiments. I read a lot of science journals. I read a lot of the new research that's coming out. I'm really interested in physics, and so I do try to keep up to date with information that's coming out of published research in that field. And then I think it's about cross-domain application. It's about taking information that's being given here and trying to figure out, does it support the knowledge that we have in other fields? Because that, I think, is the weakness in science, is that everything's so compartmentalized. So when they discovered, oh, the Earth is not a sphere, they didn't take the time to say, what are all the other things that we've said are true that need the Earth to be a sphere in order to be true? They didn't do that. You publish a paper and then you move on. And so that's, I think, what I kind of see my role as, I guess, is I'm trying to figure out, okay, this new finding, what does that affect? And what does it undermine? And I think that that's a useful thing for me to do anyway.
Once you've thrown away those assumptions, though, do you have to have completely blank page thinking, or can you just pick apart what you find on the internet or in books and weigh it up on its merits?
I try to look at what is being assumed in the interpretation and conclusion. And I'm always trying to keep my own underlying assumptions in check. And that's why when you ask me what flat Earth model that I prefer, I don't really give a solid answer, because I think you have to be open to the idea that you're wrong, that some of your understanding of the world is wrong, and to never really say, I have found truth. I found something that rings true to me, but it's not necessarily true.
So if this understanding became the social norm, how do you think that would affect society on the whole?
I think it would have an effect. I think, people are, deeply unhappy. The United States, the number of antidepressants prescribed in that country is shocking. And so I think it would be a positive thing, because it allows people to say, if our understanding of the world was so wrong for so long and the system kept telling us this lie, then what else do we take for granted that can be questioned, that can be revamped? And what about our hierarchical structure? And what about how we regulate and how we police ourselves and the government structure? I think once you realize that the way things are, it doesn't have to continue to be, I think that's powerful for people. And I think that's where the system will see itself being threatened, because this allows people to question the system itself. And are there different ways? And also, who do you trust? Because once we realize that NASA has been just putting out false information, and that upper echelon scientists have either gone along with it or just don't have the cleverness to figure it out themselves, then you realize, okay, this is just a religion that's just been very powerful, and it's a set of beliefs that don't necessarily correspond to anything real. I think it allows you then to say, if the only way we can find truth about our world is by choosing between religions or among religions, then let's create one that we like, that brings out the best in us, instead of just following one that makes us unhappy.
I mean, that's a massive list of things that anybody who's watching this for the first time will listen to that, take it all in, and have their head completely spinning. Do you think there's a chance that, I know there's several people that have sort of had a complete 360 turnaround on their beliefs. Do you think it could be overwhelming, the amount of things that you have to take on board in order to have a realization of flat Earth?
No, like I said, I think for people who are really caught up in their lives, and they have kids, and they have to bring their kids to after school activities, and they have to pay their mortgage, and they're working on their relationship, I think for those people, it's just going to be this, oh, right, okay, now the Earth is flat. Okay, sure, I need to go drive my kid to their swimming lessons. I think for a lot of people, it's going to be a very insignificant blip. And I don't think that that's good. I think that that shows something strange about the world. But I think it'll affect a lot of the people who see themselves as the intellectual elite. I think those are the people who are going to struggle with this, because they've built their self-esteem on the idea that they've memorized all this information and that they have all this knowledge, and they mistake that in some cases for intelligence, just having information. And so I think they're the ones that are going to suffer and fight against this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to know what's going to happen in the future when it comes to flat Earth. But do you think there's any chance of getting the idea across that you have to see it for yourself? How do you think we can push that idea rather than actual physical proofs of flat Earth?
Sorry, say that again. How we can see it for ourselves?
I'm kind of trying to ask how we can enforce the self-realization rather than actually just proving it to people, because nobody ever accepts. It doesn't matter how good your experiment is, people will brace against it with the education system. There must be a way that we can get people to actually look with their own eyes and see for themselves. I mean, I'm just fishing for ideas that you might have on how we could do that.
I think you have to offer people a belief system that is better for them than the one they currently hold. And you have to make it easy for them to switch. And I think it's already easy for them to switch. Well, the ridicule and the mocking, that's one thing that's preventing more people from transitioning to the flat Earth model. But I think we need to build a structure around it. You can't just say, the Earth is flat, believe this, or here's an experiment. Although I think that there have been very, very persuasive experiments that have been done, especially the ships going over the horizon, and then the P90 or 900X brings them back. But that's not enough for people, because it's one fact that makes their entire worldview crumble, but it doesn't give them a new worldview. So you're going to take away their worldview and give them one fact. Well, how do they understand themselves in that context? You haven't given them context. So what I want to start working on is building a framework, is figuring out this, not the system, but the worldview that the flat Earth is a part of. And then we can offer that to people and say, you can give up that old globe Earth model that doesn't actually reflect the truth. And here's a new framework and a new context for you in its place. And then I think you'll see people moving to this new idea.
I mean, why is it important? I'm hoping you can sum this up quite succinctly, but
okay.
You said if you've got kids and you've got, you know, your life going on, you'll be able to switch quite easily and say, okay, fine, it's flat, I've got my taxes to pay. But why is it important? What is the big deal with flat Earth?
It's important because the globe model supports a hierarchy of knowledge and information, and it allows for the hierarchy in politics and in society. So rather than rewarding intelligence, we reward the accumulation of rote memorization and facts that aren't questioned. We don't reward abstract thinking. We don't reward people who are able to take ideas and apply them to different domains, to different fields. And so that's why this is important, because once you realize that this entire structure that we've built for humans, we've built this idea that you have to be at work at 9 a.m. and then you get to leave at 5. And if you're a good person and you're a good employee, that's what you do. But why do we have to start work at 9 a.m.? That's too early. Well, is there this, who established this rule? Oh, well, you have to because that's what's done. Okay, but why is it done that way? Everybody hates having to be at work at 9 a.m. except for 7 people in HR who aren't happy at home, and so they'd rather be at work than at home. So they make all the rest of us get up at ungodly hours to be at work by 9 a.m. And that's the whole point, right? We have this whole structure that makes us unhappy, and we go along with it because we think that there's no alternative. And that's the power, and that's the good in the flat Earth ideology is it says we're not having to fit into a system. We create the system. And the globe Earth model has all these assumptions, has all these meanings for people. You're insignificant, and this is this indifferent space, and you're just this little blip, and you just have to fit in and do what you can to get as much money as you can before you die. Whereas with the flat Earth model, it brings you back to this idea that actually, no, this is created, this is designed. And that kind of puts this idea in your head that, you know what, people can create things, people can design things, we can decide to build a structure. Well, how about let's decide to build a social structure that works better? How about let's build a work structure? How about instead of working 9 to 5, because that's how it's done, how about we work noon to 8? Or better yet, noon to 5, and just be more productive and spend less time on the internet at work. So I think that it's this freedom of how you see what has to be and what can be. And that is what I think is so exciting about the flat Earth model.
I think you summed it up really nicely when you said significant. On the flat Earth, we have significance, we have meaning. On the globe Earth, we are completely and utterly insignificant. We're a speck of dust in a whole load of soup of nothing.
And I think that some people have told me that actually the globe Earth model also promotes this idea that you're special because we're the only life in the universe. But again, I think that that also promotes this idea that if it's so meaningless that if you just want to chase money and step on everybody around you in your race to that goal, then that's okay. Whereas I think if you start seeing things as, this is a beautiful world that we're in, and there is abundance, and we just have to choose how we interact with each other and with the world itself in order to see it for what it is. People think this is hell, this earth. This is heaven. There, we have food, we have beautiful things, we have adventures and experiences, but instead we spend all our time doing things that don't actually make us happy. So I think that there's a lot of potential for things to get better and for people to become happier.
Have you had plenty of support and encouragement from other YouTubers on your quest for flat Earth truth?
Yeah, Patricia Steer has been wonderful. Mark Sargent as well has been really supportive. You know, Mr. Thrive and Survive was the first one. He mentioned me in one of his videos, and that really got the ball rolling, and it brought me to people's attention. And I will forever be grateful to him for that. And also, it brought me into the community. So instead of being an outsider looking in, it kind of invited me in, and that was really nice. The Globebusters, they acknowledged me, and you know, if they see me in the chat section, and that's nice. And even the people that call me a shill, they're acknowledging that I'm a content creator that's part of the community. They don't like that I'm there, but at least they're saying hello in their own way, I guess. But yeah, I think there has been some support.
Do you think there's potential for answers that we can actually attain as a group rather than just on our own as individuals?
Yes and no. I think you have to be an independent thinker. I think you have to figure out for yourself rather than just believe what someone tells you. And so from that perspective, I think individualism. But I think that there are some things that we're going to have to do as a group. If we're really going to challenge the status quo, then you need numbers to do that. And that's where that comes in, right?
Sure. I mean, when I look at my metrics for the YouTube videos, at least, it seems that about 80% of the people are men, leaving 20% that are women. I mean, can you think of effective ways that we can get more women to come to the Flat Earth movement?
Yes, we need more white knights. We need more white knights. Yes. So when I read through evil, horrific comments. Sometimes they slip through, right? So I have filters set up, but sometimes they slip through my filter and then they show up on the comments section. And sometimes I'll see a man say something like, you know, don't be disrespectful to Sasha. And it just makes my heart swell. And it makes me love men because that's that gentlemanly, the white knight. It's the man who stands up for those that are weaker or more vulnerable than he is. That's a beautiful ideal. And it reminds me of that every time I see these men do that. And then instead of focusing on these creepy men that want to rape and crucify me, I am distracted by the reminder that there are these amazing men that are really wonderful. And so then it makes me feel safer to be putting content out there. And so I think that that's part of it. Another part of it, though, is I think that the infighting is, it really puts people off, and the aggression behind it puts people off. And for women as well. I don't know, do men get a burst of testosterone when they get angry? Is that, and then they really enjoy that feeling and make them feel powerful, and women don't get that? I don't know, because I think as a woman, if I'm very angry, then afterwards I just feel so exhausted. And so it's not something that I want to do very often, is to be really angry. And so I think if the flatter...
I think you've summed it up really nicely. I think it is men wanting to assert their dominance, and the rush of testosterone, as you put it, is probably pretty accurate.
So I think too, if you want to attract more women to the movement, I think that there has to be a more considered approach. I think that there has to be a bit of a focus on the positive aspects of this, like we've been talking about. And I think more self-regulating within the community, more people in the community saying, you know what, that comment that you just made, that's not acceptable. Not because she's telling you not to say it to her, because I'm telling you that as a member of our community, that doesn't fly. And I think if we can start seeing a little bit more of that, but to be honest, I'm obviously not a normal woman. I'm not the average woman. That's why I'm part of the Flat Earth community. So I don't really know what works first to bring more normal women, or not normal.
I think you're wrong. I think you do know. I mean, from what you've just said, you're pointing out that it has absolutely nothing to do with the flat earth proof or the evidence, which is obviously sound and there's loads of it, but it has everything to do with the social elements and the sort of caring and people's reaction to each other and fighting, which are all sort of social aspects as opposed to theoretical or physical proof.
It's culture. Culture isn't something that we're given. It's something that we develop. And the Flat Earth community, it doesn't realize it yet, but it is creating a culture for this community. And so far, it's very polarized. You have the very supportive love aspect of this culture, and then you have the other side of it. And so I think we need to realize that, okay, instead of just letting this haphazard culture emerge, let's start thinking about what kind of culture we want for this community, maybe.
I mean, can you give us an idea? Where do you actually see it in the cultural sense? This isn't something I even considered, which is probably me being a guy. But you know, it's all about the flat Earth proof for me and the physical evidence. Whereas what you've just said is really woken me up to the reality of why it's probably men, because maybe they like the aggression and the infighting.
I don't know about that. I think more collabs. I wanted to do more collaborations. I went down to San Francisco. I was supposed to meet up with Matt Powerland anyway, and I reached out to Jeranism, but that didn't work out. I ended up coming back home, and on my way back, I stopped in and made the video with Mark. Sadly, he was dying of appendicitis, and I was exhausted from the trip. So I want to go back maybe and see him again when we're a little bit both feeling better. I think the collaborations would be useful because I think this is wonderful, but it's not the same as being in the same room, having a cup of tea, talking about not just this, but kind of all kinds of things, making those links, new insights. And then I think that brings a stronger sense of friendship and community rather than an online friendship. It becomes a real life friendship. So all of a sudden, the way we see each other as part of a community is stronger. And so then that culture, I think it'll just start to shape itself. But I do think more in-person collaborations would make a difference. I really do. What do you think about that?
Well, I completely agree. I mean, one of the most magical things was when yourself and Mark Sargent were in the same room, and we have to ignore the comments that say, oh, it's been split screened, they're not really together, and all that kind of nonsense, because you could just tell from the way you reacted to each other that you were, you know, there was a little bit of awkwardness from Mark, and, you know, there was a little bit of awkwardness from you, but that is part of the magic of being in the same room with somebody. You don't get that sort of connection. As wonderful as this is, I mean, this technology to me is just so amazing. People probably thinking what a geek, but this, just being able to communicate across the pond in the way we are, is amazing. But it will never compare to what you and Mark did, and being in the same room, having that, not physical connection, but that, you know, that chemistry. You just can't get that through the lens of a camera. It's just not possible. So to see that was a really magical thing. And I think you're right, having more connections like that are a way of showing that we are, you know, not humble, but a more connected community, maybe.
Well, that we're real, because we're always seeing two-dimensional images that are fake. We're always seeing TV shows and movies. And so even when we see something like this, I think there's a part of our brain that sees it as, I'm watching a TV show where these people are talking about the flat earth. There isn't that sense of realness. Whereas I think, like, having met Mark in person, and I have to add, I did add a little green flash so that the people that wanted to say it was green screen, just to give them something to think about. But I think that having met him in person, you know, you see the person as a real person in a very different way, and they become more real in your own life. And I think that that's important for content creators. And I think that there would be less infighting if we were meeting each other at conventions or conferences and having a glass of wine or non-alcoholic beverage together, just getting to know each other as people. That would be awesome.
I mean, before we wrap up in a few moments' time, talking about fakery, just because this is obviously a flat earth show, are there particular parts of the glow model that you now look at and kind of smile or laugh at and think, God, this is a complete farce?
I take the opposite approach. I'm surprised at how wonderfully clever these people were that kind of came up with this model that's so inaccurate.
Oh, definitely. It's got to be admired in terms of the tenacity that they've had to get it so sort of sorted and have all these answers worked out. It's amazing.
They really sold it. And even like a distance to the sun, the fact that that actually doesn't work, that the angles, that you can't have someone in Africa and South America looking at the same sun and it being 93 million miles away and the Earth, like the fact that they've managed to just gloss over that. Oh, don't worry about that, everybody. Just, it's 93 million miles. Just believe us, it'll be fine. Like, I just think that that's amazing. The amount of power to shape people's beliefs with just pictures and even textbooks. And so I think it's wonderfully entertaining, I suppose, the glow birth model. And you know, yeah. I'm gonna leave it at that.
It is like the Truman Show in terms of the way it's been running. The Globe, I mean, it's like a never-ending show that's been going on forever, costing everybody millions. But that's all it is. It's just one long, non-stop movie.
Yeah, I think so. It makes me laugh more than anything. Yeah, it just makes me laugh. But I think that
if we didn't laugh, we'd all be in tears.
Yes, I do think that the ships disappearing over the horizons, because I think that that's something that a lot of people refer to when they want to prove that the Earth is round. So I think that those videos that are coming out, I think they're very effective. But again, talking about collapse, do you know what's more effective than sending your friend a YouTube video of the ship reappearing on the zoom lens? Taking your friend on the weekend, go to the beach, bring his zoom lens. Do you know what I mean? Instead of just sending them, instead of sitting in your room on your laptop alone, eating whatever, and oh, here, friend, watch this video, it'll convince you. How about go out into the sunshine, grab your friends, say we're going on a little road trip, go down to the beach, bring your camera. I think that that's the thing, that we need to start being real people in real lives and less of these just, I'm on the computer, I'm on my smartphone. We need to start living our lives, I think, and that's something that we can offer that the globe model doesn't, because the globe model doesn't want you to go out and look at the world too closely.
I did a video a little while back that said, look, put down your iPad, put down your keyboard and mouse, go outside and have a look at the flat earth for yourself. But then, of course, you have to tongue in cheek say, make sure you like and subscribe and watch my next video.
That's hilarious. Well, yeah, we do want the information getting out. I have to ask Paula, what model do you prefer?
Which model do you prefer?
The globe.
Paula's definitely not a flat earther. She still likes the globe.
I like that. I like that you're able to not let that get between you. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, there's never a crossword. None of my family are flat earthers, are they?
No, it's good to keep an open mind. So.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on, Sasha, otherwise known as Orphan Red. Thank you very, very much for being on Flat Earth UK.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really wonderful. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat about these things, and yeah, and it's been really good. And plus, it's been nice getting to know you better. I've started watching more of your videos, and I think you're doing a really good job.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, once again, Sasha, otherwise known as Orphan Red, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And to all of you in chat who've joined us live, I've been watching the chat feed. There's been a few trolls, of course, but to all of you as well, thank you very much for joining us on Flat Earth UK. I will see you all in the next video.